Okay, we've got the red light and we are all set. So this afternoon's Terrain Navigator Pro training is going to be on using the range ring tool in Terrain Navigator Pro, and some of the goals for today's webinar. This training will teach you how to set range ring preferences, how to determine how far one can travel at a certain speed or distance. It will teach you how to edit range ring properties, how to stretch, shrink range rings, how to grab the center point of the range ring to move it, how to stack multiple sets of rings on the same center, how to create a range ring from an existing marker. And we'll also talk about how to create a route or a track from the outer edge of a range ring, very key. And lastly, we're going to cover using the range ring tool in conjunction with the Parcel Data subscription that will allow you to determine adjacent owners, or who to contact if you're in a specific area and you don't know the ownership information. Will demonstrate that. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with a time of question and answers. So thank you so much for joining this afternoon. Typical uses for the range ring tool: site planners will use it to identify nearby wetlands or obstructions. Search and rescue groups use it to identify a search area or search sector. Oil and gas surveyors use it to determine well locations, for example. Engineers that are in the cell tower placement industry will sometimes use range rings to position towers, make sure there's clear line of sight and things of that nature. So there's a lot of different uses for the Terrain Navigator Pro in many different segments of our market. And so we're going to go ahead. I'm going to load up Terrain Navigator Pro. And what we have here, I have located a map that's actually east of Skowhegan, Maine. And so we're going to focus here on Eaton Mountain. And the example that we're going to use today is, let's say we have a person that we have, maybe it's a child or something like that, or an adult that's gone missing on the mountain, and how to set up range rings. So that's going to be our scenario for this afternoon. And when do we use range rings? Range rings are used to indicate all the terrain within a given distance of a central point. Just a note here, I have set my coordinates up here in Terrain Navigator Pro to 2 degrees minutes for my primary coordinates. My secondary coordinates I've set in state plane feet for my alternate set of coordinates. Remember that you can always, if you need to change your coordinates, you can always go to the File menu. You can go to Preferences, go to Coordinates, and you can set your coordinates however you would like. There's a number of different options there. But for this afternoon, and for the demonstration purposes, these are the coordinates that I will be using. So let's go ahead and place again, our scenario is missing person on Eaton Mountain. We want to set up some range rings here to determine some measurements. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the range ring tool from the toolbar, and let's left click on our range ring tool. We're going to, let's say we know that, it was at the top of the mountain. We have exact coordinates. We can go ahead and left click, and you'll see there's a set of predetermined range rings that have come up. One of the things that you can do is use the wheel on your mouse, and you'll see you can zoom in, you can zoom out. There's also the option, if you left click on one of the rings, you can shrink or you can expand the range ring, so you can stretch it or you can shrink it. So let's go ahead and let's say the center point is a little bit off. You can go ahead and left click on the center point and adjust that easily to line up where the exact coordinates. So you can move the center point of your range ring. So again, I'm left clicking on the mouse to change the location. So let's go ahead and say that's where we want. I can go ahead, I can right click on one of the range rings, and let's say I know this is the exact coordinates, this is exactly where I want my center point to be. I can go ahead, right click, and on the sub menu choose lock, and that's going to lock the range ring into position so it doesn't move. So let's go ahead and say we want to make some adjustments to our range rings, perhaps the color, or change different parameters about our range ring. So on any of the range rings, we can go ahead, we can right click, and the first item in the submenu is edit range ring. And what you'll see here is a range ring window. We have our range ring that we just created. On the left-hand side, we can choose, if we don't like red, we can change it to blue, or we can change it to yellow. We can do a number of things here. We can adjust our line style if we don't want it to be, we can make it dashed if we wanted, so there's a number of different styles that you can choose to change. You can also change the width to make it as thick or as thin as you would like. Now, the last one is you can go ahead. I'm going to change my width here just to make it a little bit brighter. Let's say we don't want 5 range rings. Let's say we only wanted 4. So we can go ahead and adjust the number of rings. Again, from this window, we can lock the position, we can hide it, we can display the name. If we have given this, missing person name, we could change the name if we wanted to. We could call this John Doe search. And you'll see the name changes here on the left-hand side. We can display the interval as a label. So there's a number of different things that you can do. You can change things. Now, you can make some notes about the range rings if you had some more information that you wanted to take some notes on. Now, this next section allows you to change the center point of the range ring on GPS position. And one of those things is if you were doing live tracking with a GPS and Terrain Navigator Pro, you can center the point of the range ring by selecting on GPS position. And that's here, you can even select a specific position or set of coordinates that you want to center it on. We also have, here's the critical thing that we want to discuss is the spacing between the range rings. Now, there's 2 different ways to specify the spacing between the rings. So, for example, we can either set it by distance or we can set it by time. That is pretty interesting because it comes in handy with search and rescue groups. They use models to show that the average speed that a person on foot could travel. So, if it's known, like I've just selected set by time, show distance traveled 6 miles if they were traveling at 2 miles an hour. So there's specific models that search and rescue can use to determine the range rings. It also has application in, other verticals as well, as you can imagine. So let's say, so we can set the spacing by distance or by time. Let's go ahead and for the sake of our training this afternoon, set our spacing between our distances. We're going to draw a ring every, let's say, 0.14 miles from the center. And again, I have 4 range rings. So I'm good to go with this. I've changed my preferences. I've set my spacing. So I'm going to go ahead and click close. And here we are with our range ring. I can zoom out a little bit. We can see the size and so forth. Now, one of the things that you can do directly if you have a number of range rings or whatever, you can always go to the layers menu, go to range rings. And let's say you had a list of available range rings, you can quickly use the Find button to locate your range ring. You'll see that Terrain Navigator Pro puts a red circle at the center so that the map is centered on the screen. If you left click on that X, that red screen will go away. So that's a handy way of finding your range rings if you have more than one. Now let's talk about stacking range rings. You can create more than one set of range rings on the same point. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. So one of the ways that it can be done is use, our map is centered here, but let's say our map wasn't centered. So I'm just going to grab the drag tool here. And let's say our map wasn't centered on the screen. So the first thing you would do is center the map on the screen using the centering tool. And then what you can do is go ahead and click on it. And it will center the map on the screen for you at the center of that location for that range ring. Now, once you've got the map centered, one of the things that you can do is go ahead and at the center here, go ahead and right click. And what you can do is go ahead and copy the range ring to the clipboard. And you'll see if I right click on one of the range rings, so we're going to go ahead and edit. One of the things that we should see here is you can, let me see here, open, okay, range rings. So stay on the centering tool, then open the layers menu, select range rings, then select new, and you can set up your second range ring. So this is, again, we're demonstrating range rings within range rings. Let's say we have only 3 range rings. Let's change the color so that we can see that it's a different set of colors. And let's say that we want to set it by distance. And let's say we want to keep it in miles. And let's change it to like, let's say 0.25 miles. Oops, there we go. Go ahead and click OK. And you'll see our second set of range rings within range rings. So again, a handy way of creating multiple range rings within a specific area. I'm going to go ahead and close that. Again, center your map, use the centering tool. Go to the layers menu, go to range rings, go ahead and create your new range rings. Oops, and polygons, layers, range rings, and make your changes. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this way. Now, there is a second way to create multiple range rings on the same center point. And what you can do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide the red range ring just for the moment. Go back to our original. The second way to stack multiple range rings on the same center point is to first create the range ring and then copy it to the clipboard. So I'm going to right click on the outer edge of one of the rings. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. And using the tools menu, I'm going to paste that range ring. And what we'll do there is that the two range rings now overlap. So we're going to right click on the outer edge and we're going to choose edit. And here's our third range ring. It's an exact copy of our original. So we can change this to copy if we'd like. And then we can go ahead, we can adjust the color of this one, make it a different color, for example. We can set our distances and do so forth and so on. So that is a second way to stack multiple range rings on the same center point. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. I'm going to leave our original set of range rings for this particular area. And I want to move on to talking about creating a range ring from an existing marker. Let's say, for example, and I'm going to grab my marker tool off the TNP dashboard. I'm going to grab this marker. Let's say we had a marker here at Pratt Hill. So it's right now it's called a marker 22. What I'm going to do is going to right click on the marker and in the submenu create a range ring. And again, it's set to our original preferences that have been set. The tool will automatically become the range ring. Again, we can stretch and shrink that, let's say as much as we wanted to. And what we can do is go ahead and this is where we want our range ring. We can go ahead and go back to our range ring tool. We can then right click on that, edit it, and we can make our changes as necessary. Let's say there are 3, or maybe let's go ahead and keep 5, because I think there's a nice overlap between the two sets of range rings that we have. And we could make adjustments here if we wanted, as well as in determining the spacing between the rings or setting it by time. So I'm going to go ahead and click close on that. So again, very easy to create a range ring from a marker, right click, and then choose create range ring. So we're good to go with that. Let me go ahead and delete the second one that we don't need. Okay. Now, I do want to talk about creating a route or a track from the outer edge. Now, again, this only applies to the outer edge of a range ring. You can create a route or a track from that. So let me go ahead. I'm just going to go back for the purposes of demonstration. I'm going to right click on this range ring that I created from my marker. I'm going to hide that. And I'm going to work with our original range ring. So if we want to right click on the outer edge of that and we want to create a route or a track from that, I would right click on the outer edge. I could say create from the outer ring either a route or a track. And one of the things the difference between the route and the track, the route, now just watch this. A route is going to put a waypoint at every single point along the outer edge. That's why you see all those different waypoint numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete that route. So I right click, delete that route for just a second. I'm going to come back to my outer edge and I'm going to create from the outer ring a track. And so let's go ahead and right click and get a track. And you'll see if I take my range ring and hide it, so let's say range ring, let's hide. I guess, oh yeah, I have 2 of the range rings, so I got to hide both of them. You'll see the red line is denotes. I right-click on that. That's the track that was created from the outer ring. So a good way to create a route or a track from the outer edge. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to left click up here. I'm going to go back to our layers menu. I'm going to manage my range rings, and I'm going to turn just a couple of those back on. So let's go to the original. Let's find that one. We'll have that back. I'm going to remove the center ring. So here's our original scenario where we talked about a possible search at this specific location. And for those of you that aren't aware, Terrain Navigator Pro has a parcel data subscription for your state or region. It's $120 per year, so it's $10 a month, but it gives you some useful information. So I'm going to demonstrate now the parcel data and how useful that can be, in a number of different situations, whether this is search and rescue, determining who they have to contact as far as landowners, or if it was a situation with a forester that was, was determining some specific information, and he needed to locate the landowner or the tax ID number. So to turn on the parcel data layer, there's two ways to do that. I can go to layers, and I can go to overlays. And what I can do is, it's not at that particular menu. I forgot something. Here's the shortcut to layer size visibility. And you are able let me just go ahead with the pull down menus here. But in any event, I digress, I'm sorry. Layer size visibility, I'm going to turn on the parcel data. So my parcels, I'm going to click close. And right now, my parcel information is shown in the light blue lines. Let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. So if this is the center of my search, let me go ahead and let's say we wanted to contact this adjacent owner. I can right click on that and I can get parcel information. And what you'll see here is the area, the acreage. For this particular address, the owner is unknown for this. So, but that's okay. Let me go ahead and let's click on a different owner. Let's take a look at this parcel and see what we have here. Oops, I did not want to do that. Let's delete this one. Let me go grab my hand tool off my TNP dashboard. Let's go ahead and right click. So what we're going to do is zoom in a little bit here. Let's go ahead and right click on this owner. Get the parcel information. So this owner is Maynard D. Cook, etc. So that's just a little demonstration here of how you can use the parcel data in conjunction with the range ring tool. You can set preferences for your parcel data. Let's say you don't want the parcel data to display by tax ID number. Maybe you want to see the landowner names. You can go to File, Preferences, and go to Parcels. And what you can do is under your label, you can say, I want to have the owner's name. So that will take care of displaying the owner's name. There's a number of different ways that you can do that. You could also do it on the address if you wanted. So you can do that. If you don't like the color, you can make your changes here. Let's say you want to, change the color of the parcel data. It's very easy to do that, right-clicking and then choosing the color that you'd like. There's so many different colors that you can choose. Let's go ahead and let's pick red. That's always a good one, etc. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this window and want to now, finishing up here, want to enter into a time of question and answers. Does anyone have any questions about the Terrain Navigator Pro Range Ring tool? You can go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can put it up in the chat, and we'll take any questions that you have. Well, I guess folks don't have questions. You can always, if you're having any problems with Terrain Navigator Pro, you can always, again, visit our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and type in Terrain Navigator Pro. If you're having specific difficulties, you can contact support at tnpsupport@trimble.com. If you have any features that you want to request on Terrain Navigator Pro or join the Terrain Navigator Pro community, you can always go to tnp.uservoice.com. We do have a number of knowledge base articles on specific topics in Terrain Navigator Pro. And you can also vote for new features on the desktop or on the TNP mobile. Well, that concludes. I don't see any questions here, but I guess that concludes this afternoon's webinar. Hope everybody's having a great day, and we do thank you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you. Oops, I do see a question that came in, and I do apologize. I guess I had not scrolled down enough, so hold on for just a second. Good morning, Michael Colley. Good to see you. I have a question. If I have to put a 50-foot buffer either side of a stream, how can that be done with range rings? So I'm going to ask Ed, our technical product manager, to join in so that he can help us with this specific technical question. So the question, Ed, is that if I have to put a 50-foot buffer on either side of a stream, how can that be done with range rings?
You'd have to make range rings at regular intervals to accomplish that. For example, let's just assume that this is our stream, which is this road here. I would just make a range ring. I would make a range ring. And, well, first of all, let's set my preferences for range rings so that it would be set. The question was a 50-foot buffer. So we would set by distance at 50 feet. And we only want one ring. All right. And now I would make my rings along here. And that would probably not be the right way to do this because you'd have to, in this particular case, this would be more for rather larger areas. If you wanted a smaller buffer, like 50 feet, how I would probably do it is I would use the route tool to route along. You'd have to do it like this. You'd have to create the route along both edges of the stream. Okay, so in this case, it's a road, but it doesn't matter. And we'll just finish this off. So you create a route on both edges of the stream. We're going to take the route and we're going to loop it so that it effectively becomes a polygon. We're going to edit that route. And instead of, so it's got the looped end to end, we're going to choose options. We're going to choose an outside buffer of 50 feet. And options. Oh, we have to have a fill. So we will make it a fill and we'll make it yellow. Okay. And now everything in yellow is 50 feet outside of the either edge of the stream or road or whatever the object is. So that would be more for the, for a smaller area, like a stream bed or a road or something like that. If you're doing, a large work site over several miles, for example, you have a report that you have to generate. You have to notify all landowners within 1 mile of a work site. Then you would use the range ring tool. Would be much better use for that. Does that answer everybody's question?
So that was a question by Unknown. So Unknown, thank you for your comment that it's critical for use also in the coastal plan of North Carolina. So Unknown, if you could just text and say if your questions have been answered about the 50-foot buffer, that would be great. We do have another question. What about multiple buffers? Very important when layering our timber sales in the PNW.
I'm not really sure what you mean by multiple buffers. So if you could clarify what your intent is, I'll be happy to explain how to do it. Dennis.
It is cool.
Stacked buffers of different widths. Ugh.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I suppose how I would tackle that if I needed to do that is I'd take my route. Okay, I got my 50-foot buffer. Now we want something that's, let's say, 150 feet out. I'd copy the route to the clipboard, and then I'd paste it, which is just like we had done before. Now we've got two routes on top of each other. We'll edit one of them, right-click, edit route. And let's say, at this case, we want another one that's 150 feet out. And let's make that one purple. Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, then we're going to get into, oh, well, maybe if we did it this way. Yeah, there we go. So so this was the 150 route, 150 buffer, just so we can see what's going on. And this one is the 50-foot. And we'll make this one, we'll pattern it like so, yellow. And I don't like that. Let's try this. All right, so there we go. So now we've got the horizontal lines are the 150-foot buffer, and the yellow lines are the 50-foot buffer. Good try, Ed. I'll have to mess around with it. Yeah, you'd have to play with you know what's going to work for your particular instance, but that's the basic gist of it.
Yes, Dennis, thank you. That is important, especially what's going on now in Washington, Oregon, and California. I can imagine that with the need for people to distance or to create buffer zones, I can imagine that this would be an important thing. So I would suggest, Dennis, if you do come across any other issues as you're experimenting for the types of things that you're trying to do, if you do run across problems, do contact us at TNP support@trimble.com. So I just want to take a moment. I know there's kind of a little bit of delay in the chat and see if there are any follow-up questions or if there are any questions of a different type about using the Range Ring tool in Terrain Navigator Pro. We'll give this just a minute to see if the folks that are still on the chat. Okay. Unknown says this, and buffers on streams is critical in forestry maps. I would suggest this be added to the wish list. That's simply drawing a line on a blue stream on a topo, then import a buffer distance either on both sides or just one side.
Well, always suggestions are welcome on our feedback forum. That said, a line by definition has no width. So what we'd have to do is also implement the width of a line at a specific width. And for a stream, that's going to vary as you're going up and down the stream. So it gets weird to try to do it that way. It would have to be based on a buffer from an area. The suggestion is good, but not much of a, it wouldn't be too practical.
Dennis also has a comment here. Maybe we can do a presentation on this topic. And how about a presentation on the subject of buffers? So yeah, we're getting a little bit into a very specific use for the range ring tool or on stream buffers and things like that. What I will do is, and I'm not sure, our marketing person who's planning our webinars is Paige. So Paige is on the call, so we'll get that information to Paige to consider. And if you do have any other suggestions for future webinars, please send those to TNP support@trimble.com. So we do appreciate that. And Paige has a note here that she's noted the request for that webinar. So this is very good feedback. We are trying, especially in this season right now, where a lot of folks are working from home, not able to get out in the field because of what's happening. It's a good time to kind of get, a little bit more skilled in Terrain Navigator Pro. So we also appreciate our customers' feedback and take that very seriously. So we'll be working on trying to meet our customers' needs, especially as a lot of folks will be working from home and might have an opportunity to get trained, go to the TNP website to learn more and to contact us and use this downtime to be able to hone our skills. Do we have any other questions this afternoon? Just waiting a couple of seconds here because I do know that there is a delay in the chat, or at least when it pops up on my screen. Yes, thank you, Paige. Go to www.youtube.com/Terrain Navigator for all of our webinars. We've done some incredible webinars over the last year. So we do suggest that you visit youtube.com/Terrain Navigator Pro. Well, we thank you so much for joining this afternoon's webinar. We hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for your subscriptions and your continued support for Terrain Navigator Pro. We hope everyone has a great afternoon and a great rest of the week. So thanks for joining. If there are no other questions, I'll just take a look one last time. Nope, looks like we are all set. So folks, have a great afternoon. If you do need a certificate for the training, a certificate of completion for your professional credits, do contact TNP support@trimble.com. Have a great day. Thank you.